All right, before we begin installing the virtualizer, let's go to UTM. And in order to do that, I'm going to go to my applications right here and go all the way down to UTM. Now, I have a MacBook M3, so UTM would be right up there with one of the virtualizers or emulators that would work. I double click on it, and there are some of my virtualized operating systems. So even though I have a MacBook and it runs, what is this? This is, let's see, about this Mac. I am running Sequoia 1501 at this point. That would be like the host, and the guest OSs. Here is the ARM version of Windows. Here's Kali, the full version of Windows 11 on ARM. This is kind of like their, I'm going to say, a very light version of Windows 11 that they just released, and it's not very good. Kali Linux for the ARM. Windows 11, that's a special, I'm going to say ARM 64 version. I'm going to go ahead and start it just so everyone can see the benefit of Windows installation on MacBook. You can see how quickly it begins to boot, and it's starting up. And while that's starting, it actually begins to boot up, and you can hear the Windows in the background, the Windows insignia, and there it is right there. So I'm going to press enter, and it's going to ask me for my password, and this is Windows right here. I'm surprised it didn't give me an announcement that it needs all these updates, but you can see I did install ZenMap, which is Nmap for Windows. Of course, on Kali, Nmap already comes with it on Windows. You actually have to install it, and I'm just going to shrink it or just move it over to this side just to show you that you can actually have more than one virtualized OS at once turned up. So let's see, let's do Kali next, and Kali will start up, and we can actually, and here's Kali, and then let me log into Kali if it ever does. And while this is logging in, we can even start up Debian right here. So as you can see, we started up all these applications, all these operating systems, and what they're actually doing is, what they actually are simply applications on your desktop. Now this one, I have to remember that's half the battle, is remembering all the usernames and passwords for your operating systems. And here, we're still waiting for Kali to boot up, but as you can see that we have Windows here, the full version of Windows, and we have Debian right here. So actually what you can do with a virtualizer or an emulator like I'm going to say UTM, or the other one that I have, VMware Fusion, you can actually open one up in UTM and the other one in VMware Fusion, or you can open them both up, as you can see, as I have in UTM, and you can ping one another, if that makes sense. So you can find out the IP address of this OS, and you can find out the IP address of this OS, and then you can ping each other. You can run Nmaps against each other. So that's a benefit of virtualization. Now, you can't necessarily do that in VirtualBox because it is free, but a VMware Fusion or VMware, because it's meant to be a cost, even though there's free educational versions, they're so much more robust, and they have many more features. Okay, so let's talk about how to install the virtualizer or emulator. We're going to download, step one is downloading the proper ISO. So as we can see here, I have an M1 or M3, I should say. So I'm going to need the ARM 64 installation. And for those of you that have an Intel processor, whether you have an old MacBook or a current Microsoft Windows laptop or whatever, you will need the AMD 64. So that's actually how you determine the proper ISO, because unless, and I'm just going to get the drawing tool, unless I'm going to say guest ISO, I'm just going to say guest ISO. Now, in order for you to virtualize, the guest ISO, G ISO, is going to have to match the host ISO, host architecture. So if the guest architecture is Intel, then you're supposed to use the host ISO is supposed to also be Intel or AMD 64. However, if you're running M1 M1 through M3 or something like that, you will have to make sure that you have an ARM64 ISO, or else if you don't, if they don't match, you will have to emulate, which is infinitely slower. The only way that you can virtualize is if, for example, you are walking into this installation with an Intel processor and you can go ahead do the AMD 64. However, if you're like me and have an M3, M2, or M1, you need the ARM 64. So I'm going to go ahead and download the ARM 64 version. As you can see, now it's going to take some time, and as you can see, it says we haven't been able to check this, but it's going to take some time. So actually, maybe it won't take time. It's going to go ahead and it's downloading now, so that's a good thing. You can see it in real time. Okay, so next thing we do, we can locate it in our downloads right there, and I like to put everything in one folder. I have all my ISOs in one folder, so I'm going to go ahead and drag this program down, and let's see, it's not allowing me to do that. Drag it down. So what I'm going to do, I can't drag it. I'm going to go ahead, copy it into here, as you can see, and I do have, this will be the 12.9.0 ARM64 network installation. I like the network installation ISOs because they have the smallest footprint, and I can go ahead and move this to the trash. Now what I'm going to do is, and then we can just jot down that this is in fact the Debian 12.9 version, and then we can go to our applications. We can go to VMware Fusion right here, and I'm going to go to, and you can't see it up here, my apologies, I'm going to go ahead and go to new. You see right there. So we're going to go to file and then new. We're going to click on new, and we're going to say install from disk or image, and use another disk or image, and then go to our ISOs right here, and they're going to be in a slightly different order because this is the menu from the file manager of the VMware itself, so it may order it differently, but we recall it's Debian 12.9 ARM64 ISO, and then we go to open, and then we go to continue, and we can go to customize settings, and let's see, 1264, and I'm going to say instead of 2, I'm also going to say latest, and I'm going to go to save, and it's going to bring me to processors and memory, and let's see, once it's suggesting a low amount of memory, I'm going to bump it up to about 6144. So I'm just going to put in 6144. So that's 6 gigs right here, and we can see that it's in green, which means there's still enough left for our Mac. And I'm going to go to exit, and I'm going to go to start, and it's going to do, I'm going to want graphical install, as you can see, and it's going to begin installing, and I'm going to continue, just keeping, so these are all defaults right here, and loading additional components. I don't know, at some point I may have to pause this, detect network hardware. So this is all happening in the background. This is unmediated, so DHCP is automatically configuring in the background, it's configuring the network, and at this point it looks like I'm going to have to, well, actually I keep on thinking I'm going to have to pause it, but then the thing is coming up. I'm going to go to continue, no domain name, that's only for a domain controller. It's going to ask me for a root password. I'm going to put it in, and it's going to ask me to repeat. It's just a 4-digit code that I like to use. Full name, Jason Myers. Continue, and then username is Jason, and we're going to have, now, but the password before it wanted was the root password. This is for our everyday user, and I just select the same one, Eastern, and detect disks, and use entire disks. Use entire disk, and then continue. Now notice that we are using as many defaults as we possibly can. Finish partitioning and write changes to disk. We go to continue, write changes to disk, we go yes, and then continue. Installing the base system. Okay, we're just going to wait for this to finish, and it shouldn't be too much longer. Okay, do we wish to scan more media? The answer is no. And United States, again, this is for the package manager, and just go with the default, no proxy see, and configuring advanced package tool right there, APT, selecting and installing the software, although it asks us to select some advanced packages, I believe, in the next screen, so you just have to be patient. Okay, let's see. The system may anonymously supply distribution developers. Just say yes. I mean, I just said yes. It's not a big deal. Okay, so what we want is the Debian desktop environment and then GNOME, and we're not gonna install SSH right now, and we can leave standard system utilities selected. So all we're doing is we're selecting Debian desktop environment, GNOME, and standard system utilities. Do not select KDE. Do not, simply because KDE looks a lot better, but sometimes it doesn't work well with virtualization for some reason. GNOME works the best. Now that we're just talking about the desktop environment. GNOME would be like Windows XP desktop environment, and KDE would be like Windows 10, Windows 11. So KDE is a lot more advanced in terms of desktop environment, in terms of graphics, but I prefer GNOME because it goes back to the 90s, and we're just talking about the desktop here. And Linux, and especially Debian, is really more about the terminal. So as long as we have the terminal, that's all we need. Although we do want some graphical ability. We go to continue and installing the software, and I think that's about it. So I'm just going to pause this video right now because it's going to take forever not forever, but it should take about 20 minutes to install, and I'm sure you don't want to wait that long. So I'll be right back. Okay, so we're just finishing up the selecting and installing software portion of the Debian Linux installation. It looks like it's almost just about done, and it did take us about 20 minutes. And of course, that's going to vary based on your own laptop, how recent it is. Obviously, less powerful laptops or older laptops are going to take considerably longer. Now we're installing the Grub bootloader. That determines in what order this hardware is installed, and installation is complete. Now it says make sure to remove installation media. So how do we do that? So we can go to virtual machine. Unfortunately, that's beyond what you can see, but there's a drop-down menu. It says VMware Fusion, File, Edit, View, Virtual Machine, Window, and Help. So you go to virtual machine, left click once, and then you can see this drop-down menu, and then we can go to CD, DVD, SATA, and let's see, SATA settings right here, and let's see, we can choose a disk or image, and actually, 1 second right here, go to virtual machine and CD connect. Hold on just a second. Let's go to continue, finishing installation, and let's go to virtual machine, I'm sorry about this. Disconnect. There we want it. So you saw what I did there where I disconnected it. That's the key. So we don't want it to install again. So go to virtual machine and then CD, DVD, SATA, and you should click on disconnect right there. Now go to, and then we can click on your username that you selected, and we can log in. And for the first time, and this essentially is what the Debian desktop looks like. So we now have easy access to our various tools, and let's let it load up for the first time. It's always going to take a little bit longer for the first time, and we can go to activities, and we can, for example, here's where we can search for terminal, and here it is, and here is our terminal, and that is how you install Linux. Now in the next video, we will actually look at how to install updates and how to optimize our installation and how to install basic programs and apps.